I'm David. I'm going to be talking about pit bulls. I think we're all aware of the reputation that pit bulls have. People kind of develop this unconditional fear of pit bulls. However, I believe that this reputation is, or they're wrongly accused of being an inherently vicious or aggressive breed of dog. And I believe this for three different reasons. One is that pit bulls are victims of fear-mongering in the media. Pit bulls are victims of their owners, and pit bulls have proven to be great family dogs. So for my first point, a lot of the fear-mongering started back in 1976 when a Louisiana newspaper published a story about, a pit bull mauling a child. And unfortunately, a lot of the claims they made were pretty erroneous. They, flip-flopped on the breed of the dog. First they said it was a bulldog, then they said it was a pit bull. And then they made up this thing about a lockjaw and how, when the dog bites, it can't let go. Now, for those of you who don't know that this is, a wild myth, a professor from the veterinary school at Cornell University actually released a statement saying, there is no such thing as a lockjaw in any breed. And he actually wrote that in all caps. But unfortunately, that came out, 30 some odd years too late, because when the media saw what kind of response they were able to elicit from their readers, they kind of started pushing a lot more of these dog attack stories and, focusing primarily on pit bulls. So it kind of peaked, in the mid-'80s when Time magazine released a story about pit bulls entitled Time Bomb on Legs. And it was all about how, one day your pit bull's gonna snap and it's gonna, rip out your throat with this lockjaw. And it's really sad, but I don't think that we need to look at the breed so much, but we need to consider the types of people who are owning these dogs. Which brings me to my second point. Pit bulls are victims of their owners. You can train any dog to be aggressive or vicious, and that happened a lot with, dog fighting in the 80s. In a book written by Karen DeLeese entitled The Pit Bull Placebo, she talks about how pit bulls became popular, among dog fighters because of their physical structure, but not necessarily because they were vicious dogs. And in conjunction with the media publishing these stories, they really gained a pretty bad and sick reputation. And she even wrote that gangs would have scheduled dog fights where the losing dog, if it didn't die from the dog fight, the owner would, beat it, torture it, or kill it. So we need to, consider who's owning these dogs. Also, people who try to cultivate like a tough appearance. Also, when they hear about a dog being vicious or aggressive, then they, this is the dog that they want to own. So what better dog to do that than, a buff pit bull with cropped ears and a chain around his neck? So it really, perpetuated the stereotype or this idea that pit bulls were inherently vicious, which is really unfortunate for responsible owners. Which brings me to my third point, that pit bulls have really proven to be great family dogs. The ASPCA actually recommends them as family dogs, stating that they're loyal, they're fun. As with any dog that's big and powerful, you need to, obviously provide enough attention. You need to socialize the dog. You gotta be mindful, where the dog is around your kids. Like, it's common sense, but when, unfortunately a pit bull, attacks somebody, then the media is gonna blow that up and it just looks bad for everybody. But as for the 5 pit bulls that have been a part of my family, they've always been great, loyal, respectful dogs. They'll melt your heart. So, in conclusion, pit bulls have wrongly a terrible reputation. They're accused of being vicious and aggressive. However, this is largely due to fear-mongering in the media, poor owners, and they really have proven to be great family dogs. And it's really sad that we can generalize for a whole breed of dogs based on the actions, of a few bad ones. You know, nobody likes that when we do it to entire groups of people. Thanks.
All right, David, there's a good preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, and when you get into the body of the speech, it's pretty well organized. I don't think that you're as distinct as you need to be with the proposition at the beginning. It sounds like you've got 2 or 3 claims in that opening section rather than a single proposition, and as a consequence, it's a little less certain at the end what the point is of the argument. I mean, we know the general argument that you're making, but if I had to decide on the basis of the way you said it, do I agree or disagree, I think it's a little bit harder to pick that out. And so you want to be careful about how you phrase it. I think you just kind of walked into the topic instead of, directed us into the topic. And so that's a slight issue, something that can easily be fixed. The signposts on the secondary points in the body of the speech, they're relatively clear. I do think you need to develop a little bit more information on each of the points that you're presenting. You mentioned fear-mongering, and the 2 references we get are to a story from Louisiana back in the 1970s, and then a Time magazine article in the 1980s. And both of those things are 40 and 30 years old. Are they the things that create this sort of perception of pit bulls today? If it started there and it became pervasive, there's a way to demonstrate that people have this pervasive attitude toward pit bulls. I think you take it as a presupposition that people see that as an issue, and I'm not sure that that's the case. It wouldn't be hard, for example, to find some kind of survey that indicated what people think are the most dangerous animals, whether or not they are, and then maybe use that as part of a document that demonstrates that pit bulls have in fact been marginalized, and the fear-mongering thing. The number of stories that have been covered, other than the 2 stories that you mentioned, I didn't hear much beyond that. I think, again, that needs to be developed a little bit more. On the second point, when you're just talking about the dog owners and dog fighters and all tough attitude and appearance, this is based on what? I mean, what information? This is based on stereotypes, just like the argument about the pit bulls are. If there was some data that showed that these are the dogs that are preferred by, or some testimony even, let's say, gang enforcement officers, there's a piece of testimony that says they choose these particular kinds of dogs because of this attitude, then I think you've got something that's a little bit more convincing. But you're just doing the same kind of stereotyping that you're accusing people doing against the pit bulls. And so, hey, you could talk about Michael Vick if you want, and give an example there. Maybe that would fit into the category and give it a little bit more substance. All right. On the third point, I think that you need to also have a little bit more data. I do like the kind of recommendation that the American Kennel Club? The ASPCA gives. I thought that was pretty good, and then and your personal experience, I think that's nice also. It's that makes it a little bit more reassuring too. You do a very nice job speaking to the audience. You're talking to us the whole time, and you're very direct with people and sincere on those kinds of things. So I think most of the issues that you have, just information in the argument to make it a lot more sound than you have. It's a starting point, but it really feels like a starting point as opposed to the point that you want to be at the end of the argument. All right, thank you.